actually just even experience your bubbling, joyful energy before we started. So why don't we? I mean, my intention is to really continue our conversation in a joyful way. And then for me, it would be amazing to experience and actually just explore under those 3 pillars of audacity that you and I were talking about. So courage, care, and non-conformity. The non-conforming part of your joy movement.
Sounds great, Alina. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm always excited to connect with you in any capacity, Alina. And congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you and sad that I'll miss the launch, but very happy that we get to celebrate in Vancouver in just a matter of weeks now, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can't wait. And yeah, absolutely. Definitely. But let's do, where do you want to start? Where does your heart go in terms of talking about joy, non-conformity, energy, whichever way, and then we'll play.
Where does my heart go? It's interesting, isn't it? There's so much we could talk about. I think we could both talk for hours about anything, but if you've got me talking about joy, then there's definitely, I could talk for hours and hours. The freedom that I feel now as an entrepreneur is one of the most joyful things, Alina. And, discovering a way of working that feels good in my body. So for those that don't know, I'm a senior clinical psychologist. I used to work in the National Health Service. And content warning, I'm going to mention the loss of my child because I can't have a conversation about joy without mentioning him. And he is one of the most joyful things in my life. He was the little one who made me a mum. He was my firstborn. But I left the National Health Service. And one of the most joyful things, Alina, for me about being an entrepreneur is doing things my way. In the National Health Service, everything has to be proven by a randomized controlled trial. And I still combine the evidence base with what feels good for me, but it is about honoring what feels good in my inner guidance system, right? But when you asked me, my true answer is, when you asked me, where does your heart go? What came up was Finlay. And then what also came up was, sometimes as a bereaved mum, it's like, how much can I bring this? But the reality is that one of the biggest things that I do in the joy movement, Alina, is I talk about the beauty and meaning that can come from loss. And everything that I do in life, we were talking, weren't we, briefly before we hopped on, about even the way I express myself through my clothes and things like that. It's all related to the freedom that I found after losing a child and the boldness and the bravery. When you lose somebody very close to you, and there'll be many people in your audience who will have lost somebody close to them, or a job, or a marriage, or anything like that, it connects you to how important things are. And Finley's life connected me. Every single breath I take now, Alina, I know that life is short. So I've got this burning desire to make the most of it and to express my spirit. And I'm emboldened because of the trauma that I went through. And that's, I guess, a way that I am non-conform. And you talk about courage, care, and non-conformity, is that I am brave enough to speak about post-traumatic joy, which is different to post-traumatic growth. It takes it one step further. So, yeah.
Fabulous. And I was just saying hello to, our mutual friend, Parisa. Thank you so much for being here. And actually what she's saying, yeah, you're so cool, so good at bringing two seemingly disparate things together, the joy and the loss. And, it's the paradox of life. Yeah. As you said, all of this, for me, I always reframe everything. That's why, my team just keeps telling me I'm the queen of reframing, because every obstacle for me personally, it's an opportunity.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And I bet so for those that don't know, Alina and I met in 4PC, which is Rich Litvin's mastermind. So that's how Alina and I met. We met at the airport, and you were like you were like my little secure base on that first on that very scary first intensive. But that's an example. We're having an audacious conversation today, so it got me reflecting this morning, Alina, on what are the audacious things that I have done. And that was one of them. One of them was literally applying for a mastermind for the top 30 coaches, or that's, Rich refers to it as the top 4% of coaches and consultants in the world. So even claiming that label, no matter what anyone else thinks, was audacious for me, right? And then it was scary. So it's not like, for me as well, especially as someone who used to experience very debilitating anxiety, which doesn't plague me anymore. I'm not scared of my fear like I used to be. But a big part of audaciousness for me is being willing to feel the fear and do it anyway. Right?
Absolutely.
And in 4PC, there's been times when I'm like, when will I stop feeling scared? And I remember Shemaine, who I believe is talking to you next week, Shemaine was just like, you won't. But it's like feeling the flipping fear and doing it anyway, and you and I also mentioned, Alina, this idea that your vision is so much bigger than any of the fear or any of the concerns about people's judgments or even a fear of failure. When your vision is so compelling. So my mission is to spread joy in memory of my little boy, is to make his short life incredibly meaningful. And I have done. I've spread joy to thousands of people, and that's how I do. I run big, large online events, and I reach a lot of people and help people in a way more powerful way than I used to in the NHS. So that's non-conforming, right? But my vision to do that is so much bigger than my fear. So I will do things like apply for 4PC, or offer to do a speech at the Scottish Parliament, or wear bright red lipstick, which sounds like small, but it wasn't for me. I used to be fearful of expressing myself, right? But it's this kind of willingness to feel the fear and do it anyway. Because why not?
Totally. But why not? I know. But that takes, as you said, it takes courage, definitely, but it also takes time. It takes practice. It takes consistency. It takes commitment. It takes a lot of these things. And you and I were sort of, reflecting that we haven't always been like this. Yes, we might have a sort of audacious, courageous streak, a non-conforming streak in us, but you do need something that will bring it to the surface. And one of the things you mentioned the book, but and Parisa is here, so I owe a lot to her in for me defining the caring part of audacity, which I was very clear of the courage and the boldness that comes with audacity. One of the things that I felt it intuitively and I knew it at a cellular level, but I couldn't express it, to your point, was the caring. Is when you care so much about someone, something, your mission, your vision, that you don't care about what other people think. And that's audacious. The caring and of course, expressing, as you said, through, you and I were talking about this sort of big earrings. It's the boldness.
We love a big earring, don't we, Alina? We flipping love a big earring.
Yes, it's expression. It's expression of things that you love. And for me, I love this because they really represent, it's the African continent, but, I had one of the best, if not the best, experiences in Ghana last year. So I always associate this with that.
I ran an event recently, though, and there was this brilliant talk from a friend called Caro Gomez, and she was talking about how, I can't remember in which part of South America, but how in this indigenous population, that actually adorning yourself, she was talking about, there's not really this concept of you get dressed up for a wedding, because every day you adorn yourself. Now, I think in Western culture, we can think that it's related to somebody's ego. I know that sometimes I wear bright blue wigs. Some of my friends say to me, I would wear that to a wedding, and I'm just wearing it like to a normal day of work. But it resonated so strongly, Alina, because what she shared was, it's nothing to do with ego. It's literally honoring spirit. And that's how I feel. I feel like I know that my little boy didn't have the privilege of a long life, and he did not want to leave. And I have the privilege. So every day I have this, I'm a spirit in a human body, and I get to express my spirit and honor something bigger than me through what I adore my body with. And that feels really fun to me. But it's not just fun, and it's nothing to do with ego. It's to do with joy. It's to do with doing something because it feels good with no attachment, right?
Well, it's a no attachment. And it's interesting. I mean, for the audience, of course, and that's you. I'm also acknowledging that, the big earrings and the colorful and all of that is not everybody. Some people express through much more subtle ways, and that's okay too. It's just we're all expressing differently.
Absolutely.
But yes, it's this sort of, for you, that sort of non-conforming, it's obvious to me, of course, that sort of audacious and the joy. But you mentioned, so I don't want to let you off. You mentioned the Scottish Parliament, and I'm so curious about that moment of audacity. If you just share, I don't know, a minute of that with the audience.
It was just 11:11 when you asked me that, which I pay attention to. Yeah, do you know what, Alina? This was actually off the back of a 4PC event, and I think there's something about the collective energy that inspires action, right? Which inspires audacious action. There's been a number of things I've done off the back of those events. And one of them was that I reached out to a charity. It's called Children's Hospice Association Scotland. It's a brilliant charity, CHAS, Children's Hospice Association Scotland. And I said, hey guys, I wrote them a letter, actually, is what I did. I wrote them a thank you letter for looking after us after Finlay died. And I thanked, the volunteers that made the tray bakes that made us feel loved during that worst time of our life, and the gardener, you had your own little private garden and all these kinds of things. And I just expressed unadulterated gratitude to this charity for helping us. And then I said at the end, which I never would have done in the past out of a fear of my own anxiety, I said, if there's ever any events that you would need a parent speaker for, I'd love to come and speak. Anyway, I didn't expect them to say, oh yes, please, and it's at the Scottish Parliament, and you'll be speaking after a couple of politicians. But this is the beauty, and for me as well, joy is that, and I was reflecting this morning, Alina, that there's something psychologically, I'm obviously going to see it through the psychological lens as a clinical psychologist, but there's something there's a real shift for me internally that helps me be audacious, which is that I've got my own back, which is that I know that I can't get it wrong. And even if I get it wrong, that's okay, because I am my secure base. I am going to be compassionate and loving to myself no matter what. So then, perfect, let's go and take a load of risks. I am that secure base in terms of attachment for myself. So I was just so excited to do this talk and to go. And, it was so beautiful. My parents and my best friend and Neil came along. And, there was a few hundred people there. And off the back of the event, and I wasn't even nervous, Alina, or I was, but I just didn't care. I was just excited, which is huge for someone who used to experience debilitating anxiety. And off the back of the event, I got a thank you card from the, from the head guy, and he said that off the back of the event, and he alluded to the fact it was influenced also by my speech, that the government committed to an extra, I think it was £2.4 million for the charity.
Wow.
So it's just, and this is like one example, but I invite all of your viewers to consider, if you knew you couldn't get it wrong, and if you knew that you could give anything a go, what could be possible? In the past, I never would have put myself forward for something like that. And then look what was possible. These families that are going through something similar to me and Neil, that those parents might receive extra support, or these children and their siblings might receive extra support. So it just makes you wonder what's possible, But yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh, wow. Fabulous. I mean, there's so many different ways, but it is a non-attachment. And in a way, what I'm hearing you saying, Sarah, is that sort of almost limitless, just don't put a limit on joy. Don't put a limit on, things that you can do. That sort of endless possibilities. And yes, I mean, it's interesting. You said if you knew you couldn't get it wrong. for me, I mean, I used to ask that question, but so what if you get it wrong? You know, because a lot of people can't get their heads around, yes, you will get it wrong, actually. That's, you know, it's more probable that you will get it wrong rather than you won't. And that's okay too. It's having that compassion to self, is having that backing yourself, which is huge. A lot of people, you know, can only aspire to get to a place where they don't judge themselves. They have so much self-love that, you know, for me, it's like that experimentation. It's like it's an experiment. If it doesn't work, I mean, the stakes are really high. You know, that's not, you know, I mean, we can make lots of fun of something like this. You go in front of the Scottish Parliament, the stakes are high. So, you know, don't expect to go there unprepared, or, you know, all of that it's a given. And I think there's a lot of things that could go wrong, you know, technology, you name it, you know, there's a lot of things. And that's where the joy comes from.
Exactly. That is where the joy comes. And it is, you know, when I said I cannot get it wrong, I was actually meaning, like, I can't, whatever I do, it's not going to be wrong, you know, that kind of sense. But it is interesting actually to reflect on, because I think of the Scottish Parliament, there was, I think because of the nature of what I was talking about, I gave myself even more grace than usual. But it's interesting as we speak, Alina, to think about where could I extend that into the rest of my life, because, you know, I couldn't really get it wrong. I mean, come on, everyone was going to be so supportive of me. I'm the bereaved parent there to talk about that experience. So, and to express love and gratitude, you know. But it's interesting to think about, where else could I, because it's within my power, we're all the powerful creators of our lives, where else could I anticipate positive responses from everybody? You know, where could I deepen into anticipating positive responses from people, or just being so focused? I was so focused on expressing the gratitude in my heart that I didn't really think of anything else, actually. I didn't really consider all the ways that it could go wrong. I just didn't go there. So there's something else there, right, that we could transfer into other areas of our lives. Where could we stay so focused on that vision, like you said, about making that vision so compelling that you don't think about the other stuff, you know?
Yeah, you get so anchored. Actually, what came to mind when you were just talking about it is, you know, having that positive, positive intent, but also the positive anticipation, positive assumption. For me, it's all about, and maybe it's my, you know, overly optimistic brain, as my family always just sort of jokes with me, but it is always assuming there is going to be something positive out of that experiment, no matter what. And, you know, you were talking about the, you know, the loss and the trauma, and, you know, for me, it's the silver lining. It's the phoenix bird. It's if you haven't failed, you haven't actually tried enough. And you know, I mean, that's the truth. And I know for me, sometimes I do jump a little bit into the coldest water, you know, without knowing how to swim in cold water. And that's where you learn most. Within that spectrum, of course, you don't want to become reckless. So no, I love.
Really? Do we not want to become reckless?
Well, I'm not sure I do. You know, it's just like it has to be.
It sounds like quite a nice. The word has like a nice energy to it. I'm just saying.
Yes, I know, but you know, it's just like that definition of audacity. It has got. You have to be careful not to just go on to the recklessness part. It has to be some sort of, you know, border. But you had a definition of that. I'm curious. Do you still have that? You know, the one that you found, which is a new one for me. The sort of definition of or audacity was something slightly.
Yeah, let me get it up. It was to do. Yeah, it was showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks.
That's it.
How good does the energy around that feel? Showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks.
It was a surprise factor that really, I haven't heard that before, but that's a really good one, because it brings this sort of playfulness to it. Okay, that's just a surprisingly bold move.
And it kind of, it's like most people wouldn't do it.
Yes.
It's that idea, isn't it? That sense of like, most people might not put themselves forward to be like, yeah, I'm one of the top. It's going to be some people that have got a lot of self-belief for some reason. You know, I'm already thinking it'd be so interesting to do like a research project on why. Why? What, you know, what are the factors that have led the people in our mastermind believe, to have such self-belief, right? And then to, obviously there's going to be a correlation between the success of the business and that. But it's interesting, isn't it, to reflect on
We can do everything.
Surprisingly bold risks.
That's a great idea, actually, sort of take it a little bit deeper into, find out whether there is some sort of a consistent thread.
Yeah.
What's driving people, what is it?
Yeah, well, and I would imagine, I mean, I could be wrong, but I would imagine that most of the people in there as well have experienced hardship, because there is something about having experienced challenges that it kind of galvanizes you almost, or it can do. And this is what I'm interested in exploring more and more, this concept of post-traumatic joy. But what is the difference between the person who can lose themselves to trauma, or the person that can find really deep meaning and motivation in trauma, right? I'm so interested in the mechanisms at play there. But I would hazard a guess that most of the people in 4PC have experienced challenges.
Challenges, yes. And actually, when I was listening to you, it's interesting, and also for the audience, because I experienced a very serious family trauma about 10 years ago, which I don't talk about, certainly not much. And it's not something, and you've obviously lost a child, which is a huge trauma. Not wishing that on anyone. So it's not like we're advocating here for trauma or challenges in order to sort of, and is not being afraid because most of us now with my sort of wisdom and gray hair, I know that most people would have experienced a type of, we call it challenges, we call them provocations, and trauma. It was a very interesting, podcast that I listened to recently, actually, and this is what the speaker was talking about trauma and the definition. It really is a loss, and we can feel it through a big loss like the post-traumatic stress disorder. When people go to war, and that's or losing someone dear. But there is a more a milder type of trauma, like losing a job. And someone could experience that, 10 times more intensely than someone who had a much more, in the conventional way, traumatic experience. Oh, Sarah, I've lost.
Sorry.
I've lost you. You're giving me.
No, I'm back. Apologies. I forgot to put the do not disturb on. Apologies.
That's okay. It's having fun. It's like, this is real life. But so I think, and also a third type of trauma, I think it was when you actually, you have that sort of empathetic response to someone who's going through one of those experiences, and then you take it as your own. So, I'm sure most people will experience that. And
yeah, and I think, people don't have to have experienced severe trauma like child loss or natural disaster to be inspired by the ideas that joy is possible following challenges or hardships, and we are the ones that get to give ourselves permission to feel joy. And that is audacious in itself, this sense that I can choose. Even though I've recently divorced, I can still choose to lean into joy in this moment. I don't have to feel a certain way, right? And to know that that we can create the life that we want to create, that we don't have to adopt, as a bereaved parent, and not just as a bereaved parent. I remember meeting a lovely older woman when Neil and I went traveling after Finlay died in New Zealand. And she was talking about the loss of her husband, actually. And she said to me, and I'll never forget this, she said, the hardest part of losing him was when I started to feel better. She said, was when I started feeling good again. And I remember that with Finlay, and it doesn't have to be child loss. It could be the loss of anything. But it's this, children will feel how they flipping feel. They'll feel how they feel. If they feel joyful, they feel joyful. They're not making it mean anything about them, right? And it was the same for me when I started to feel excited about Christmas a couple of years after Finlay died. What did I make that mean about me as a mum? But I was witnessing it, and I was conscious of it, and I was getting support. So I was able not to identify with these fears of what that meant about me. But we are powerful, and I want to inspire. I know that my spirit is one of unadulterated enthusiasm and joy, and my mission is to spread that joy. Like you said, it's almost like I was already pretty joyful, and it kind of doesn't make sense, but losing a child gave me this permission to remove the upper limit of, hey, life is fragile, so let's be fearless in our pursuit of joy. Let's be absolutely fearless in centering joy in a radical way in my life, because I know that that's my mission. And then inspiring a lot of people to do the same is just exquisitely beautiful from my perspective, because it's all in Finley's memory, every single part of it, right? But it's like this, giving ourselves permission that life doesn't always have to be so serious, or that we can have the serious and the joy, that they're not separate, right? But it was way before Finley died. You know, even as a child, Alina, I remember looking around and thinking, why is everyone so serious? You know, and I can be serious. I can absolutely do serious. So it's not, you know, I've worked with children who've experienced the worst trauma in the world. I can sit with the most serious things. And I'm not always trying to reframe everything in a positive way by any stretch of the imagination. And my spirit, my inner guidance system, forever, ever since I was a child, communicated to me, why are people not enjoying their lives more, right? And now I get to live that out, which is just amazing.
Which it is, and actually it is, and it's that's audacious and that's provocative to say we have a choice to be joyful, and I truly believe that. You know, as hard as it is for some to hear, and you've got the credibility because you could have just remained miserable, and of course, I mean, that's a big loss, and we can be sad for it, but we can also be joyful for the rest of what we have in our lives, and
exactly. That's my experience with clients as well, Alina, is lots of people are fearful of being too exuberant or joyful in case it makes other people feel bad. And I remember before Finley died, when people would say to me, how are you doing? And I would pick up on their energy because I'm such an empath. And if it was someone with lower energy, I wouldn't share my truth. So I'd say, oh, not bad, instead of saying, I'm great. You know, so it can be, codependency can kind of come into it as well, you know?
Totally. And but it's again, it's learning to really preserve your energy and respect the other person's energy, and that's where you make I don't want to say a sort of judgment, but in a positive way of what you want to share, not share. That's where the permission that we give ourselves. But I'm aware we've got like a couple of minutes until wrapping, and you and I, you're right, we could talk for the whole day and more. But if there is sort of one thing you want to leave the audience with in that spirit of your joy movement, what would that be?
To give yourself permission to center and prioritize your joy, that it's a gift to the people around you when you prioritize your feelings of joy, that sense of doing something with no attachment to the outcome, just because it feels good. There's this definition of joy that David G., one of my spiritual teachers, uses, where he says, happiness is dancing in the lake, but joy is being the lake. So it's deeper, and I love that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And talking about dance, I think you were just mentioning to me just before that you've got this event that's coming on 27th, 28th of August, which is called the Shadow Dance. Is that right?
It's called the Shadow Dance, but it's not a dance event. It is, and talking of non-conforming, it's combining psychodynamic, psychotherapy, and high-level transformational coaching. So I'm introducing people into this new way of working that I've developed, which I'm very, very excited about. So yeah, it's online, the 27th and the 28th of this month.
Fabulous. Well, I think if anybody is, they can obviously connect with you directly, DMs, and talk about events. I mean, as you said, my book is coming out next week, which is, I'm so excited. And also there is a little bit of apprehension, but, it's so exciting. And we're also doing an online free event on the 20th, which is next Tuesday. So a week tomorrow, which is free. And then I'm going to be in the hot seat with, the Adapter Queens, Tatiana, Carmen, and Sylvia. And we're also going to give away a really, talking about surprise, audaciously surprising, a place away for our Audacious Leaders Retreat in Transylvania next year for whoever shows up. I know.
How exciting. What time is that?
So that is at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. So it's open to everybody. Yeah. If you want to be in with that chance to win a, place at our exclusive retreat in Transylvania in May 25, just come along. And
sounds amazing.
Lots of fun and lots of excitement. But thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Alina. And deepest congratulations on your book. I can't wait to celebrate with you in Vancouver.
Thank you. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll celebrate before that. Anyway, maybe, and can't wait to see you in London, or me when I come up to you in Edinburgh. And yeah, connect. For everybody who's here, thank you for being online or watching us later, and stay joyful.